predominantly what we're seeing, especially with fentanyl, is it's coming through the Arizona border. I believe the last statistic I saw was 53% of all fentanyl seizures nationwide, as far as the pills will go, happened in the state of Arizona. So 53% of everything that was seized in the entire country originated in Arizona. So we're seeing a huge influx, especially of fentanyl, coming through our southern border.
Welcome to Shooting Straight with Brad and David. I'm David Clouse, your Navajo County Sheriff, and Brad couldn't join us this month, so I brought three special guests to fill in for Brad. We have Bruce Tucker with the Navajo County Sheriff's Office. We have Sergeant Danny Deets, Navajo County Sheriff's Office Interdiction Team, and Jared Robinson with the Navajo County Attorney's Office. Thank you all for joining us. We're here in Joseph City today, and we want to talk a little bit about the interdiction work that the Sheriff's Office has been doing for quite a few years. And Sergeant Deets, you've been a big part of that for more than a decade now. Right. Tell us a little bit about what you do, your partner, and kind of the work that you've been working on and how long you've been part of our interdiction team.
So I started with the interdiction team in 2013. And when you say criminal interdiction, what that means is we're looking for criminal activity. You're stopping the passage of criminal activity or contraband or illegal goods from going from one point to the other. So that's what we do out here, focusing on our highways, I-40 being a big one because it's a main thoroughfare from one end of the country all the way to the other end of the country. And then I work with Zoltan. He's my third canine. He's about 8 years old, and he's a tool that we use to help us get these drugs off the streets.
What kind of breed is Zoltan, and how long you've worked with him, and why is he such a special, dog? Why do they work so well? What's kind of the...
So he's a Belgian Malinois, and they're a very smart breed. They're very athletic, and they're very easy to teach. They have a high drive, so we use their natural drives to accomplish the things that we need to accomplish. I've had him since 2019, and he's helped me seize a lot of dope, a lot of drugs over the course of the last 5 years.
We're right here on I-40. I want to talk a little bit about I-40. Navajo County, quite honestly, gets a lot of press, gets a lot of coverage statewide, even or across the country, for the work that you guys are doing on Interstate 40. What makes Interstate 40 such a high volume of this kind of activity? Why are we focusing on it? And what are the flows or the stems of these drugs that are coming through here? Why are they using these routes?
So I-40, like I said earlier, is a main thoroughfare from the west coast to the east coast. So it's a straight line to get to almost anywhere you want to go, coming from either California or even from Phoenix. They also have to use some of our other highways, such as 87 up to 260 and so on, to get to wherever they're going. So they have to pass through here. There's a few highways that will get you out of Arizona going east, but predominantly if they want to go northeast, generally they're going to come through Navajo County. We see some that come through the California border and up this way, but predominantly what we're seeing, especially with fentanyl, is it's coming through the Arizona border. I believe the last statistic I saw was 53% of all fentanyl seizures nationwide, as far as the pills will go, happened in the state of Arizona. So 53% of everything that was seized in the entire country originated in Arizona. So we're seeing a huge influx, especially of fentanyl, coming through our southern border.
So you're seeing a lot of that, stemming out of Arizona. What are type of the figures or the numbers that we have been doing, or you and your team? You work with a couple other handlers. What type of weight do you guys typically intercept on I-40 here?
So the average weight we typically see anywhere 20 to 30 pounds. Methamphetamine, it really depends on the drug. Sometimes it's fentanyl, sometimes it's meth, sometimes it's cocaine, sometimes it's heroin. But we've seen that weight go up over the course of the last, I would even say, 8 years. In 2017, we weren't seeing a whole lot of fentanyl. We weren't seeing a whole lot of these pills that are coming up. And if we did, 1,000, 5,000, that was a big load. Just recently, one of our deputies stopped 164,000 pills. It was 36 pounds of fentanyl pills in the back of this car. So we're seeing the volume go up for sure as they flood the market with these pills.
Sergeant Deets, one of the things I'd like to talk about, we all know how dangerous fentanyl is. All of our deputies are carrying naloxone or Narcan
Right.
in the event someone overdoses, and we want to do what we can to save their life, right? What are we doing to protect Zoltan and our other canines and our handlers from interacting with such a dangerous substance? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so like you said, all of our deputies are carrying naloxone, and the naloxone will actually work on the dog. So each of our handlers actually carries Narcan or naloxone on their person, and we can use that on the dog in the event that we have an unintentional ingestion of it. We try to make sure that they're doing a sniff only. They're looking for the odor of the drugs. And so we're doing everything in our power to make sure that they're not going into the car to potentially bite or grab it unintentionally.
How about with regard to court? When it comes into court, that's a very important aspect too, isn't it?
Yeah, we like to show the jury whenever we can just how big the seizures are. We're trying to give them some sense that these drugs weren't possessed just for personal use, that they were possessed for sale. And when they're seized in such large quantity, that makes it more obvious. And some jurors don't have a good, clear concept of what an ounce is, what a pound of drugs is. So if we can show them, then it makes that more impactful. But the courts have recently implemented measures where they don't necessarily want us bringing that in the courtroom anymore and showing the jurors, much less they don't want it to be admitted into evidence so that the clerk's office has to take it. So they're preferring now, because of how dangerous the substances are that we're dealing with, that we show the jury a photograph in place of showing them the full-blown drug seizure.
I find that so interesting that you can't, that stuff is so dangerous you can't even bring it into the courtroom, or that's a good...
It's a scary fact that we're dealing with. And aren't they cutting, I've heard some of the drugs, the fentanyl particularly, getting cut with xylazine or something like that?
Yeah, we did actually had one seizure that way a few years ago that was cut with xylazine. It's a horse tranquilizer. It's very dangerous to humans. And so we got to take extra precautions to make sure that we're being safe when we're processing these loads, because we do still have to process it and make sure that we can present the case in court so that Mr. Robinson has an easier time of actually getting the conviction. So we have to do our part on our end, but we do have to take those precautions to keep ourselves safe.
I will just add too that not only is fentanyl in and of itself a very, very dangerous substance, but the thing to keep in mind for any would-be fentanyl user out there is that this isn't being mixed in some sort of scientific lab with all the controls that come with that, and the dosages are expertly being created. There's some lab in Mexico where the precursor chemicals come to. They're mixing it there to make their profit margin even better. They're mixing in other things like horse tranquilizer. We've seen methamphetamine as part of it. We've seen things even as benign as like Tylenol mixed in with the drugs. So you really never know what you're getting or just how much fentanyl is in any one given pill. And it can be very dangerous, and you're kind of rolling the dice anytime you're dabbling with that.
A real Russian roulette opportunity.
Yeah.
And this is truly a partnership, right, between what law enforcement is doing on the street, or what Danny or Sergeant Deets is doing with his team, and then it may seem like you find somebody with 31 pounds of fentanyl. This is a closed case. This is easy to do. They're transporting it. Tell us a little bit about the challenges that you have to do to get a conviction.
Yeah, so addressing the challenges specifically, my main responsibility for the county is to prosecute the major drug crimes. So we're talking about sales cases, we're talking about large quantities. I don't often deal with the cases where it's just simple possession, where somebody is not intending to sell it. But those cases are easier in a sense, even though we're talking about a much lower quantity, because those users tend to have it on their person somewhere, close proximity to them. When we're dealing with a drug trafficking case, sometimes the drugs are stashed in some sort of hidden compartment in the vehicle, whether it's a natural void or something that was built into the vehicle. The person driving will often claim they didn't know the drugs were there, claiming that somebody must have placed them there. And I think there is this thought that is kind of prevailing that, you know, these poor drug trafficking mules are sometimes thrown into these situations. They don't really know what they're getting into, which is absolutely not true. They know exactly who they're interacting with. They know how much they're getting paid to do it. Most of the time what they're getting paid nowhere matches even close the load that they're transporting in terms of value, but they know what they're getting into. But their argument becomes sympathetic that they may not know that there's this massive drug load somewhere in their vehicle. And so then we have to try to convince the jury, based on the evidence that we have, that they were knowingly possessing those drugs. And as you can imagine, no major trafficker is ever physically possessing it. So the law allows us to argue something called constructive possession, where we don't have to prove they were actually holding the drugs, but that they had the ability to exercise dominion and control over the drugs. And the way we do that, the way that we show that they were knowingly possessing the drugs, is we will rely on the officers, what they noticed prior to the stop, the driver's reaction to the officer's presence. How is the driver acting on the traffic stop? Is he acting like a normal traffic stop, or is he acting more nervous than he should be? We'll cite to just how big the load was, the level of effort that was used to conceal the drugs. We'll argue about the value of the load, and that there's simply no way somebody could have a load that valuable in their car and not know it's there. So I got to work closely with these guys. We got to communicate really well so that we can kind of put together all of the breadcrumbs for a jury to follow, and then hopefully find the defendant's guilt.
Sergeant Deets, tell us about a normal traffic stop.
Like he mentioned earlier, looking for the reaction to the presence of us. The most of the motoring public doesn't have the same type of reaction as somebody that's doing something that doesn't want to be found out. And this isn't just unique to drugs, this is all types of crimes. I've seen it in kidnapping cases, where I sat out here on the median after getting an ATL of a mother kidnapping her child from CPS. She gave me the same type of reaction that I would see a drug smuggler or somebody with a warrant or a suspended license. So we're looking at their reaction to our presence. At that point then, we're looking for a violation. Sometimes we find one, sometimes we don't. I followed people all the way to the county line and not found a violation and have to let it go, because we don't want to create bad case law. We're not out here just stopping people for no reason. We have to stop them legally and lawfully. That's one of the things that can get attacked in court, is the reason for the stop.
Yeah.
If the reason for the stop is not valid and it gets suppressed, we have no case. The case gets dismissed. From there, it goes into the interview process. And generally, I'll have somebody step out of the car, we'll talk, I'll write the warning while we're talking, and I'm looking for things like inconsistencies in their story, quick turnarounds from long distances, point A to point B. So if somebody's making a long trip, but they're not staying in their destination for very long and now they're headed back, that's something that raises my interest. Their behavior during that interview, is the nervousness coming down or is it staying elevated? Is the stories with the passenger consistent with the story with the driver? All of those things I'm taking into account while we're doing the traffic stop. And then we move from there to sometimes receiving consent, sometimes using Zoltan. If we don't get an alert after somebody tells us no on a search, give them their warning, tell them have a nice day. If we do get an alert, then we move into a probable cause search, and if we find the evidence of a crime, then we make an arrest and process it and do our interviews. During all of that time, we're looking at everything from the start of that interaction to the end, and we're gathering all the information and putting that together so that when it does go to court, Mr. Robinson can do his job and present it to the jury or the judge and get a successful prosecution out of the case. So we have to do things like taking pictures of the evidence, treat it like a crime scene. We do our interviews. If they want to talk to us, then we'll do interviews and hopefully glean some information out of that. And then obviously the report writing is the most crucial part of that. is taking everything that I saw on the traffic stop, because Mr. Robinson wasn't there. So I have to paint a picture, tell a story, make a movie to be able to give him the information that he needs to successfully prosecute the case. So the report writing, to me, is the most crucial part of all of it, because we have to document everything that we observed, everything that we saw, smelled, and found, and what the statements were from the defendant, and put that into a report to be able to give to him.
I'll add to that, our court system, once somebody is charged with something, is not a fast-moving institution, and the cases will often take up to a year or beyond to actually get them to go to trial. There's lots of motions that get filed along the way, and so the picture that Sergeant Deets paints not only helps me in charging and knowing all the little breadcrumbs to put together, but then it helps him remember everything that happened on the traffic stop later on when we go to trial. I think when you do this kind of work, one case can sound a lot like another case, and you do it enough, they can all kind of blur together. So I appreciate report writing like Sergeant Deets has, that draws to enough unique characteristics about each individual traffic stop that it is easier to remember and keep track of one case from the other.
Sergeant Deets, weren't you recently recognized for your interdiction activities?
Our unit was, yeah, we were recognized at the Arizona Narcotics Officers Association as Canines of the Year.
That's really cool. I really appreciate what you do for us. Don't you also teach this to other officers throughout the state?
I teach a basic interdiction class, teaching other officers what to look for. It's a very, very basic class, but it gives them the tools that they need to be able to successfully do these types of cases, because like we said earlier, it's not just the drugs. The drugs get all the attention, but we've seen an increase in human trafficking recently, particularly with exploiting children. We've seen homicide suspects that we've caught on warrants. We've seen all kinds of stuff. And so being able to give these younger officers the tools that they need, knowing what they can and can't do on a traffic stop legally, helps them to be successful in their careers and be able to stop some of the flow of crime going through their areas. We're a large county. We have deputies up here. We have deputies down south. We have officers at other agencies. And so being able to give back in that way is very rewarding.
Well, Sergeant Deets, Jared Robinson, thank you both so much for not only joining us here today, but what you guys do every day, making a difference in this type of work. It's one of the biggest impacts that I think we're seeing across the country is this flow of fentanyl and other dangerous drugs that really affects children, adults, and a lot of our leading causes of overdoses. And what you guys have done here locally is tremendous. And thank you for joining us here today to have this discussion. I know there's a lot of interest throughout the county into the work that you guys are doing on this. So that's all the time we have this month. Appreciate you joining us as we talk to these experts in this field of criminal interdiction.